After deposing the god Ra, the deity who gave origin to the Egyptian world, Osiris became the new god of the universe. The new supreme god took the goddess Isis as his wife and started a reign of great prosperity. Osiris brought civilization to men, who, until that point, lived quite primitively. The god taught them agriculture, weaving, and how to make bread. Besides that, he decreed the use of laws, which would give order to chaos. The Egyptian civilization began to flourish under the reign of the benevolent god Osiris. However, Osiris had a powerful and ambitious brother, Seth. His kingdom stood in the arid desert around Egypt, and so he was jealous of his brother, who had a fertile and prosperous kingdom. Osiris had an affair with Nephthys, Seth's wife, and Anubis, the god of the dead, emerged from this union. Angered by his brother's betrayal, Set prepared his revenge. The god of the dry lands and personification of evil invited Osiris for a great feast in his honor. During the feast, Seth gifted the guests with a beautiful coffin and said he would offer it to the one who fit into it perfectly. Osiris decided to try it, and, immediately after settling in, Seth closed the coffin, trapping the god. The evil god threw the coffin into the Nile, drowning the supreme god. Isis wept profoundly after losing her beloved husband, and these tears poured into the Nile River, giving rise to its traditional floods. The goddess and her sister Nephthys looked for Osiris's body, and Isis, after finding it, tried to hide it, but Seth spotted it nonetheless and smashed it into 42 pieces, spreading them throughout Egypt. Isis, with Anubis's help, managed to recover the pieces and, under the guidance of the god of the dead, she mummified Osiris. Using her divine powers, the goddess was able to resurrect her love, but Osiris would now reign over the world of the dead. After coming back to life, Osiris had a son with Isis. His name was Horus, and he swore he would defeat Seth, the usurper of the throne.
Osiris was perceived as the counterpart in death of the sun god Ra, as the grain god. He was worshipped in the form of a sack filled with seeds which sprouted green, also represented by models with articulated members which women paraded through the streets at festivals, and manipulated to demonstrate the god's virility. The germinating seed symbolized Osiris rising from the dead. An almost pristine example was found in the tomb of Tutankhamun. Based on numerous manuscripts, the Egyptians' conception of the underworld was described as a narrow valley with a river running through it, separated to the living world by a mountain range, from which the sun rose and set. At the verge of the world where the deceased negotiated the path from this existence to the next one, avoiding perils with the precious help and guidance of the god with a dog's head who swallowed shadows and tore out hearts. As a final judgment, the dead were led by Anubis into the Hall of the Two Truths, in the tribunal of 42 divine judges. There, the dead person's heart was weighed on a scale against the feather of truth. If the feather outweighed the heart, meaning that the person has led a life in conformance with the precepts of the goddess Ma'at, who represented truth and right living. Horus then led the deceased into the presence of Osiris and other gods who sat as judges in the underworld to have an eternal and happy life. While ordinary mortals who were neither too good nor too bad, those whose hearts were in balance with the feather entered under Osiris's service. If the heart, heavy with shame and sins, outweighed the feather, the person was thrown to the soul-eating demon, Ammit, and did not share an eternal life. The person who was taken by the devourer was subjected first to a terrifying punishment, then annihilated, suffering a second death from which there was no return. These depictions of punishment may have influenced medieval perceptions of the infernal existence in hell via early Christian texts. Purification for those who are considered justified may be found in the descriptions of certain great scripts, where the dead experience the triumph over evil and rebirth. For the damned, complete destruction into a state of non-being awaits, but there is no suggestion of eternal torture. The story of the death, mummification, and resurrection of Osiris was the myth that offered the Egyptians the hope of life after death, in the kingdom of Osiris. The cult centers of the god's worship was located in Abydos, in Middle Egypt, where for more than 2,000 years, the mysteries of the god were celebrated. The first phase of the festival was a public drama depicting the murder and dismemberment of Osiris, the search of his body by Isis, his triumphal return as the resurrected god bringing along the gift of eternal life, but the secret rituals were never revealed. The chief embalmer and overseer of the mysteries enacted the role of the jackal god Anubis, the protective god of the dead. The ritual of mummification allowed the deceased to be identified with Osiris. Despite their rituals of death, mummification, entombment, the Egyptians were not obsessed with death, but with life. So, the real purpose behind these rituals of remembrance were to ensure that there's a new life after death. They wanted to live as perfect beings in the field of reeds, inside Osiris's domain, where the blessed dead gather in rich crops of barley and wheat. The cult of Osiris was widespread around Egypt. The god absorbed the traits and names of several local deities, such as Khenti-Amentiu, the god of Abydos. At Memphis, Osiris became closely identified with the falcon god, Sokar, which earned him the name Sokar Osiris. While during the Greco-Roman periods, in the Ptolemaic times, he merged with the sacred Apis bull to become the popular deity, Serapis. The Osirian legend is known from pure Egyptian textual sources, and from an embellished account of great writers. Based from those texts, he was the eldest of 4 siblings, including his sister and consort, Isis, his sworn enemy, Seth, and younger sister Nephthys. Osiris was the judge of the dead and the underworld, including sprouting vegetation and the fertile flooding of the Nile River. He was described as he who is permanently benign and youthful, and the Lord of Silence. Although the god is most closely linked with Isis, he was also tightly associated with Anubis, the mortuary deity and patron god of embalmers. With that being said, myths surrounding Osiris can't be mentioned without involving his illegitimate son, Anubis, and vice versa. Osiris was the god who brought prosperity and wealth to the land of Egypt, and will be remembered not only as an iconic figure of culture, but also as the pillar that holds the fundamental secrets and origins of the Egyptian religion and mythology.